Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Hi, it is Sunday, the 25th of September at 8 p.m. Hope you're well. My name is Arsh, Ellahi, and I've got on the line tonight good friend and also business partner to the name of Neil McCoy Ward. Neil, are you online?
Hi Arsh, yeah, I can hear you.
How are you? You good?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Good, right, okay. We've got a fair few people online, so we're going to jump straight into it. Tonight, well, first of all, if you can hear us nice, loudly, and clearly and correctly, if you can just give us a quick hi and a quick hello, and a yes or no to say that you can hear us, that would help us. Um, okay, hi Peter. So that's, yeah, everyone saying hello. Brilliant. Okay, so moving on. Hi Laura, hope you're well. So tonight we're going to be talking about how both Neil and I have multiplied our rent-to-rent businesses quickly and fast. Because if you've seen some of the marketing that we put out recently, well, obviously tonight is focus is very much as how to scale up your business, how to get landlords ringing you, and how to quickly find desperate landlords. So just so that we know that we've got everyone on the right webinar, is that so Carol's put okay. So Carol's put that she thinks that the sound is poor. Everyone else says that they can hear nice and loudly and clearly. Carol might need to just log off and log back in to get his connection sorted. Okay, so first of all, I want to say thank you. Thank you so much for trusting Neil and I with your time this evening, because we appreciate that time is the most precious commodity, and I guarantee that this is going to be the best investment that you make. Because in just 90 minutes, you're going to understand the explosive mix of deal flow, systems and staff, but more importantly the question which is on the tips of your tongue, which I can imagine being, how do we find these landlords, how do we approach them, how do we get the deal? So why should you be listening to me? Not going to blow my own trumpet too much, but I'm the best-selling author for a book called Boom Bust and Back Again. I've been involved in property, so I haven't literally just come into the market. I've been involved in property for 16 years full time, so you could say I'm a bit of a veteran, and I've earned my scars. I've done things the bad way, I've done things the wrong way, I've learned from them, and now I'll never make those mistakes again. I also run a group of letting agencies for the last 8 years, which is also part of a franchise model now called Renting Out, and I'm a full-time property investor, trainer and property mentor that's helped hundreds, if not thousands, of people who are hungry for change to achieve financial freedom. So just one thing that we haven't mentioned here is that I'm a landlord to, I think, 650 odd tenants. And I'm consistently buying, at any one point we're buying on average around 15 properties. So not to mention taking on rent-to-rent properties every month as well. So that's enough about me. So I'm going to pass you over to Neil McCoy Ward now. He's going to tell you a little bit about who he is, what he does, but more importantly, what's his mission.
Great, okay. Thanks, Ash. Yeah, very similar to Ash. This is my 11th year now in property. I started investing in 2005. It was May of 2005 when I bought my first investment property. And that was a baptism of fire, really, because I paid the asking price, which was my first mistake, and then I refurbished it all on my own. So I actually spent a lot of money and a lot of mortgage payments every month, £400 or £500 in interest, trying to save money. But it was only afterwards I realised that it cost me more by doing it the DIY way. So there's a top tip for all of you for a start off: get the right tradesman in from day one. Don't go DIY. And from that, I basically followed a very simple strategy, which was in a rising market, I refurbished, which added value, and then I released equity and used that money to as deposits for more houses. And it starts a snowball, really. You do it with one, then you've got two, then it's four, then it's eight, then it's, and it just keeps going. But on to the rent side, I started rent to rent, it's probably, 3 years now, I think, 2 or 3 years. So not a great deal of time, but the reason I got into it was I was helping a friend of mine with his HMOs. And when I found out about rent to rent, and I realized how easy it was, I'd already been helping people, I've been in property for so long, and I just went for it straight away. And I did a couple of courses, and I didn't really get very good results. So that's the honest answer there. And I couldn't figure out why I wasn't getting results. So I just thought, hold on, Neil, you're a marketing guy, you're a sales trainer. Stop following other people and just do it yourself in the way that you know. And that's exactly what I did. And I went from not getting anywhere in a few months to getting 4 or 5 houses in my first month. And then it just kept going and going and going. And if any of you are on Facebook today, you might have just saw the live video I posted of a property that we just finished this weekend, renovated. So that's another property. That's another £800 to £900 cash flow a month. So rent to rent for me is the best strategy within property, because why would I spend 30 grand on a deposit when I can spend 3 grand per house? That's 10 houses making almost £1,000 each a month. You know, it doesn't really compare to a deposit where you might make £500 a month. So that's the comparison. That's how big this is. And as Arsh said, my mission really is to help people like yourself to escape either the rat race or to create that lifestyle that you want to create, because I know what it's like. I used to be in a 9 to 5 type job, and I couldn't stand it. And every day I just looked forward to the end of the day when I could go home, and I looked forward to the weekend. And you know, days become weeks, weeks become months, months become years, and you know, there has to be a point at some time when you just decide now's the time for the change. So that's really what I do. I help people to make that change now by sharing my experience of how I've done rent to rent. So that's a brief introduction on me.
Okay, so that's Neil's brief introduction. So just so that we know who we've got online, how many of you have already got rent-to-rent properties? How many of you know what rent-to-rent is? How many of you don't know anything about rent-to-rent? And there's no shame in admitting it if you don't, because all it does, it gives Neil and I a good indication as to what it is that you guys require. So if there's someone online that doesn't know what rent-to-rent is, we'll start from the beginning. We'll build a foundation so that you know exactly what it is, so that we're all singing off the same hymn sheet. So okay, let's have a quick look. So Nigel says he already knows what it is. Peter says knows what it is, just getting started. Okay, so yes, I know what it is. I know what it is, but I haven't got any properties. Thought this were okay. I know what it is, but not got a property yet. Okay, right. Okay, so a lot of people, well, everyone knows what it is, but right. Okay, it's interesting because Lady called Sadia says doing a rent-to-rent course, but struggling to find landlords. Right. Okay, so Neil, this is going to be great because this is going to be exactly what we're going to be teaching.
Great.
I have 2 rent-to-rent properties, so we've got people in there. We've got people that are online that all know what it is, but they're looking to probably just advance on what they do. So, do you want to talk to them about what rent-to-rent is and why it's such a powerful strategy?
Yeah, definitely. And I just want to cover a quick point that you mentioned on the comments there, Arsh. I have people that, and Arsh as well, we have people that come to see us all the time that have done rent-to-rent courses or they've done property courses and things, and they say, you know, oh, I'm thinking about quitting or I'm thinking about stopping because I'm not getting the results. And you know what? I can honestly say that, I'm not just saying this, 99% of the time it isn't your fault when you're not like able to source properties or things. It's your trainer's fault for not training you properly or not giving you all the information. And I've seen it so many times where you know you go on courses and things and they don't give you all that information. They hold bits back, or they say, oh, for this bit of information you've got to pay all this extra money. And it's just complete nonsense. And I see it day in, day out, especially with the sourcing of rent-to-rent properties. The strategies that are out there being taught are just, they're completely, I don't know how to use the word wrong, but they're not the right way to source properties at all. Most people teach letting agents, which is the last place you want to go for a rent-to-rent deal. But we'll get onto all that shortly. Let's talk about what it is then, what rent-to-rent is. Now, in Arsh and I, in our opinion, this is like the iTunes of the music world. Rent to rent, as I alluded to earlier, is a way for you to make huge sums of money with very little money down. Like, you know, if you were to spend 2 or 3 thousand on a rent to rent deal, and you were to just make like £500 a month, that's £6,000 profit a year based on your 2 or 3 thousand. So straight away you're getting 200 to 300% ROI, return on investment, on your money invested. If you can show me any other deal out there that's going to do that for you, let me know and I'll sign up for you, sign up with you. So let's go to the next slide, Ash, and I'll talk a little bit more on it. Rent to rent, then. If you think about the property world, people have been doing the same things over and over again. They've been, you know, buy a property, refurbish it, rent it out. That has been the bread and butter. And then not long ago, HMOs came into effect. Now, HMO stands for House of Multiple Occupancy, which is where you have more than one person living in that property. So you could take the same 3 or 4 bed house that you would rent to a family for, let's say, £1,000, and instead you can rent it to individual sharers and make £2,000. So HMOs became quite lucrative a few years back. And the evolution really of HMOs is rent to rent. Rent to rent is the same, so it is an HMO, it's the same thing, except you don't own that property. You manage it just like a letting agent would. You manage it on behalf of the landlord. So that's the difference here. But yet, if you were to buy that property, you've got to put a chunk of money down, like tens of thousands of pounds. But by managing it, you don't put anything down. You're just the manager of that property. So that is how powerful.
Can I just interject here, because I think that's a powerful point. Now, the reason why I really like the rent-to-rent strategy, and with all due respect, I own a number of properties, include a number of HMOs, including 4-bed, 5-bed, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-bed HMOs, including a 23-bed HMO. Now, they're all properties that I own with the leverage of bank funding. Now, one thing that I like about this strategy, rent to rent, is the fact that if it doesn't work for you, depending on what you've got in your agreement, you could very easily, when I say very easily, there is a way for you to get out quickly. Now, the beauty of it is that, let's just say that you've bought the property. What do you think your way of getting out is? The only way that you can get out of that property is A, by either handing the keys back to the bank or the lender, which means that it will then get repossessed, or by selling the property. Now, the beauty with rent to rent is that depending on what you've got in agreement, and obviously subject to conditions, now in all my rent to rents, what do you think my risk is? Because I'll let you know that the risk to any of my rent to rent is 1 month's rent. So that's it. So in all my agreements, now I take 7-year agreements, which Neil and I will talk about shortly. Neil takes 3-year agreements, I take 7-year agreements, but in all my agreements, I've got a point in there where I can give notice at any point, giving 1 month's notice. So my risk to that property, let's say that I'm paying the landlord, let's say £500 a month. My risk to that property is £500. So for whatever reason, if it doesn't work out as expected, if I'm having continuous problems, la-di-da-di-da, whatever it may be, my risk is £500. Now, if I bought the property, my risk to that property, and let's just say that the property I bought was £100,000, my risk is £25,000 initially as a deposit, plus the valuation fee, plus the solicitor's fee, plus the ongoing mortgage payments. And remember, then I've got to, if I need to get out, I need to sell it, which means that there's solicitors' costs again, there's estate agents' costs, plus the time it's going to take to sell. So it will end up into tens of thousands of pounds. And you've got to question, will you get the money back that you paid for it, depending on when you bought it? So this is really the beauty. This is really the beauty of the rent-to-rent strategy. It is very low capital intensive, so anyone can do it from scratch. And the one thing that I will mention a little later on is that for people that come and join us a little later on, we're actually going to show you a strategy of how to fund your rent-to-rent deals, which Neil doesn't know about actually, because something that I've just thought of throwing in there as a caveat. So Neil, back over to you.
Okay, I'm interested as well what you're going to say as well, Ash. All right, let's go on to the next slide. Okay, so here's one thing that we've put in because a lot of people they sort of misunderstand what rent to rent is as a strategy. A lot of people think that you're subletting a property, which is not the case at all. So I just want to clarify this because otherwise it's going to get in the way and you're going to sit through the webinar thinking, oh, subletting, this isn't allowed, etc. So what it is you're not renting that property from the landlord on an AST, an assured short hold tenancy agreement. If you were and then you issued out ASTs under that, that would be subletting, which you're right would not be allowed under mortgage lenders' terms and conditions. However, what you're doing is exactly the same, almost the same, as a letting agent, in that you're signing an agreement with the landlord saying that you will manage that property. The only difference is that you take responsibility for the internal maintenance of the property, excluding, the obvious things like boiler, central heating, electrics, and you don't do anything structural or external. So you're taking responsibility for the inside of that property, and also you get to keep any profit in the middle. You guarantee the landlord a fixed rent every month, regardless of whether that property is full or empty. And that's it. That's the only difference between you and a letting agent, really. So in terms of, the physicalities of what you do. So that is really the difference there. You're not renting that property from them and then subletting it. You're looking after it for them on a management agreement. So that's really how that's how it works. Now, it's an absolute dream for a landlord because they get all these benefits. I mean, Arsh, we've got them on the next slide, some of the benefits there. If not, I'll just talk through a few. No, okay, so I'll just talk through a few. So when you actually speak to a landlord properly, and I know this is a big challenge for a lot of people, which is why we sort of, Arsh and I always include the negotiations and sales side of the training as well now, which is massively, it's increased conversions, a couple 100%, I think. Now, the difference is when you actually know how to negotiate properly with the landlord and you show all the benefits, such as we're going to refurbish your property, we're going to maintain it, we're going to take care of everything for you, we're going to guarantee the rent for you. You don't have to pay for any fees like you do with a letting agent, etc., etc., etc. It just keeps going on. The more you keep stacking these benefits, the more excited that landlord gets. And it's just a matter of time until they say yes to your offer. I have only once have ever had a landlord say no to my offer. That was it, just once, because of the way that it's systemized. And you speak to anyone that's done any of the trainings, and they'll say the same thing. That the sales and negotiation system is just foolproof, because it's like going through a corridor of doors. You close each door behind you before you can move to the next door. And once you go through all the process, that landlord is saying yes. And it's as simple as that, really. Next slide, Ash.
Now, just before we move forward, so a couple of questions that's come through. So, Bart Peter and Peter pretty much asked that. Do you have to be, is the letting agency market regulated? Unfortunately, it's not. It's something that's been talked about for a number of years, but you don't have to be. Anyone can set up as a letting agency tomorrow, and that's the beauty of it. So that's just a little tip for you right there. Apparently has asked, does the landlord have to be a specific mortgage for us to let his room out room by room? Do you want to answer that question now, Neil? Because I can imagine that's going to be a question that comes up quite a lot on the webinar.
Yeah, actually, because of the time, Arsh, we're already 20 minutes in. Let's cover that question and all the others towards the end, because that will take quite a long time to explain that.
Okay, so moving on then.
Okay, so what you do is really simple. Rent to rent is very simple. That word there should say managing a house, not renting a house. So you're managing a house from a landlord, and then you are simply renting it out room by room. So let's say, for example, you were to follow my model, And my model is very simple. That's how I've been able to scale it so fast. I rent 3-bedroom, 2 reception houses. So that means there's 3 bedrooms upstairs, there's 2 receptions downstairs, and your kitchen and bathroom and whatever else. What I do then is I turn one of those reception rooms, so that's normally the dining room, into a bedroom. And this is really simple. People sort of get confused over this. There's no confusion around this. You basically take out the dining room furniture and you put in bedroom furniture, and that's it. And now you've got 4 bedrooms. So let's say, for example, that landlord wanted £700 a month for that property, or £1,000 a month, depending on where you are. So you've got £1,000 going out. You might have, let's say, £250, £300 in utility bills and whatever else. So you'll spend, let's say you're paying 700 then, 300 in utility bills, so you're paying £1,000 out. What you then do is you rent that room out for, let's say, £400 or £500. So if you've got 4 rooms and they're making you £500 each, that gives you £2,000. Take away £1,000, you've made £1,000 profit. Now, in most cases, it's going to be more like £450 a room, or if you're up north, it's more like £400 a room. £450 a room. But then again, I say that, but if you're up north, it's going to be lower cost to rent the house in the first place. So it's all comparable. It all sort of balances itself out. So if you had 4 rooms at £450, that's £1,800. Take off £1,000, you've still got £800 profit. And we sort of teach never to take on a property where each room will make you less than £125. So you might want to write that down. If it doesn't make you £125 for each room that you've got, it's not really worth doing. So you want to have a minimum of 4 rooms, which is going to make you £125. That's £600, £500. Okay. I think that's. Do you want me to cover anything else on the strategy, Arsh, in terms of the logistics of it?
So, Bharat Sport, that's £125 per week. No, Bharat, that's £125 per month per room. So hopefully that answers that one. So, okay, so why now, Neil? Why is now the perfect time?
Right now in the country, we have got a massive pandemic of tenants that need accommodation, and the demand is so great that it can't be met at the moment, which is why HMOs have come into effect. Again, houses of multiple occupancy. And most of this demand, in my opinion, based on the hundreds of rooms that I've got, is coming from the continent. So Spain, Italy, Poland, Lithuania, Slovakia, Slovenia, Croatia. This is where all of the tenants are coming in from at the moment. In my properties, I would say maybe 40% are British. The 60% are non-British people. They're coming over for work. A lot of people coming over to build a better life for themselves. A lot of people are coming over to study, and there really isn't that much good quality accommodation out there. That's why if you do a really high-end property and you furnish it beautifully, you make sure it's really well maintained and kept and clean. That's the most important thing. People spend all this money on luxury items and high-end, making their house look, all posh. And the tenant doesn't really care in most cases. What they care about is a clean property, which is another top tip. Make sure you've got a cleaner that goes around every couple of weeks and just absolutely cleans that property spotless. So that's what the tenants are after. Now, when they come in and do a viewing on our properties, on our rooms, it's usually gone straight away. People come in, they look at it and say, yeah, this is the nicest I've seen, it's the cleanest I've seen. And, it comes down to all the little things as well. Using mattress protectors, that makes your mattresses last twice as long. If your mattresses get really old, throw them away and buy a new mattress. It's the little things that are going to make you the big profit. The other thing is, there isn't a big player in the market right now. If you look in most industries, there's always a dominant player, the big dog, that is making 80% of that money. In rent-to-rent, there isn't. It's people like myself, like Arsh, like maybe even you sat at home, that go out there, build up your company very quickly in terms of the amount of houses. And once you're established, it's very difficult for someone else to and take that market position from you, because you're so well established that you. And let me give you an example. If you're in a job and you've been in that job for a long time, what happens when a new graduate comes in to your company? Well, straight away, they've got no experience, have they? They're inexperienced, they don't know what they're doing, they cause problems, they lose the company money, and it's the same in rent to rent. When I started, there was a few big players in Coventry where I live, and now they're not around anymore. And since then, I've had so many people try and come into the market, and they've really struggled because I'm so well established that it's very difficult. But then again, I've helped students who have gone into an established market and they've dominated that market, because it's all about the way you do it. It's about your strategy. It's about the systems that you use. That's the key. It's the system, which is why Arsh and I have mind maps and all these legal contracts, and we have everything there. It's similar to what Arsh does as a franchise, except it's not a franchise. It's just it's what we've put together.
Okay, so keep moving on.
Yeah, Arsh, do you want to mention this actually?
Right, where do we begin? Because this year has been quite a turmoil year, would you say, for the economy? So we've had Brexit. Now, with Brexit, the whole point of it is that the government were trying to get people onto the property ladder, and they've seen that the home ownership in England has been at the lowest level in 30 years. And they thought, as a result of Brexit, landlords would leave the market, and as a result, there'd be more properties for first-time buyers to try and attract them to get onto the ladder. Fact is, that hasn't happened. Fact is that rental figures has been as strong, or rental properties have been as strong as they've ever been. So now you've got to ask yourself the question: is that when's the right time to get into rent to rent, and when's the right time to get into a form of accommodation to get you onto the ladder? Now, the average house price is nearly 9 times the average salary, making it virtually impossible without the bank of mum and dad for generation rent to get on the housing ladder, which means that there's always going to be more demand. Does that make complete sense to everyone? Not only that, we've got to also look at the interest rates are at the lowest in history, which means that the UK's biggest banks are not passing their savers onto first-time buyers. But when they thought of Brexit, they didn't think about all this, and they didn't take any of this into consideration. So, it doesn't go hand in hand. What their aim was to get everyone into owning their own property. What they didn't think about is all the other effects that the economy will feel. How are they going to get onto the ladder if the interest rates are still low, which means that people aren't earning anything in their savings? The cost of living has slightly increased as a result of, for argument's sake, now, don't know what you know of the private rented sector, but landlords are being hit with additional taxes, and they are going to continue to get hit with additional taxes, which means that rents have to go up. Now, people that are living in rented accommodation means that it's going to cost them more, which means that they're not going to be able to save as much, which means that they're not going to get onto the property ladder, which means that there's going to be a continuous demand for tenants. Now, I know it's a vicious circus. Now, moving on. So Nigel has put a quite funny comment. He goes, okay, we get it. Now, can you tell us, how do we source rent-to-rent properties and landlords? Nigel, there's a funny phrase called patience is a virtue, my friend, because we have to tell you everything about it before we're telling you how to go and get it. So Neil, talk to us about it.
Yeah, that's just funny. You always get some people who are really like, come on, just get to this is good stuff. It's good to understand the foundations as well. Why is right now a good time? Otherwise, I mean, this is a really good example. Someone that we knew that came through some mentoring, they just went out and got like 30 houses from a letting agent, paid all this money, like all this inheritance money, and there wasn't a demand in that area. It was a small town, so we've got to lay all the foundations here. Yeah, I mean, we've already talked about this. Apple, this is what Steve Jobs did with the iPad. was revolutionary. And in my opinion, so is rent to rent. It is absolutely revolutionary. I don't know how else you can make this amount of money in property so quickly without going out and hustling every day. I know some people that go out every day and they're hustling to source leads and then they sell that lead. And I just think, why hustle for £1,000 to sell a lead when you can take on a property like that and make many, like £5,000 or £6,000 a year, or even more for 5 years? I'd rather take 50 grand than a grand. So that's just my opinion on this as well. Let's go on to the next slide, Arsh, and let's keep it moving. Okay, so the reason there's a better service for landlords is because you're offering them all the things that no one else can offer them. A letting agent cannot offer to refurbish their property. A letting agent can't guarantee them the rent without them paying the insurance premium. A letting agent has to make their money in the middle. So they have to charge a fee, like a 10% fee or £500 up front, or they make money on the repair bills, etc. With us, there isn't any of that. We don't do any of that. So next slide. Okay, this is what we'll talk about as we go through then. There's only really 4 simple steps with rent to rent. Number 1, you find the deal. Number 2, you control it, so that's via a management agreement. Number 3 is you furnish it. And number 4, you fill it with tenants. That's it. 4 simple steps. That's it. Next slide. Okay, so explosive mix to multiply your business fast. Number 1 is deal flow. And it's the same, it doesn't matter what industry you're in, it makes no difference. Without the sales, like your sales reps in that company, you've got, or your marketing person, you've got no deals coming in. So you've got to get that flow of deals coming in, or else you're not actually in business if you haven't got deals coming in. Number 2 is the systems. So just to share very quickly on me, the way I built up a dozen companies in the space of 3 years was not because I'm sort of some genius. It was simply because of the systems that I put in place. I am an expert in systems, including staffing, finance systems, marketing, sales. That is my expertise, and that's how I've been able to do it so quickly. And I applied the same structure to my rent to rent company. And you've got to have those systems in place, and you'll fly. And that includes staffing, so performance-based pay. I don't believe in paying someone a wage. It's not the way I do business. I do everything performance-based pay, and the people that work for you will appreciate that and prefer that too. Just not many people really do it. Which is your third point, is your staff. You've got to have yourself a really good property manager and a fantastic team. So that's your cleaners, your handy people, everyone that's involved in this, your bookkeeper, accountant. You've got to have that excellent team, and it will make your life so much easier. Next. Okay, so there are over 17.5 million homeowners in the UK, and 10% of them own a buy-to-let property. Next slide. Okay, let's just skip through a couple of the slides here, Arsh. So I was just reading an article earlier today, which was that the guy who won The Apprentice, or he was runner-up or whatever, last year or this year, Alan Sugar actually said to him, he advised him to invest in property, because if you speak to any person that's wealthy, they'll all say the same thing: invest in property. They all say that, and I agree with it to some extent. And I just think rent to rent is an extension of that, where you don't need to take the risk, because there is a risk. Let's be honest. If you purchase that property, like Arsh was saying, our risk is a month if it doesn't. Whereas if you own that property, your risk is, until you sell it, if you can. If there's ever a market crash again, you may get into a little bit of trouble. And I can say that because it happened to me in 2008 when the market crashed. Next slide. Yeah, next. Okay, let's go through a couple of these slides, Ash. Let's get on to the good stuff. Okay, so script then. Here's one thing I want to get across to all of you. So many people that I see making this mistake. They go into letting agents, which if you really have to go into a letting agent, I don't recommend it. But the last thing you want to say is that you do rent to rent, because then they're going to show you the door very quickly. And it's the same with landlords. You don't ever want to use those words rent to rent. That's what we use as a community so that we know what we're talking about. But in the real world, you never want to use that term because people don't understand it. And some people have got negative connotations towards it, which is incorrect. But there was a few high-profile cases a few years back where people were doing a similar thing, and they were running off with deposits and money and all sorts. And so it did get these people gave it a bad name right at the start. So the first thing you want to say is that you help landlords with property problems. So that's okay. I help landlords with tenant problems. Again, it's that's one way to describe it. I don't even really use any of this. What I say is that I help landlords to get a better return by increasing the value of the property with less risk. So that's what I usually say when I'm speaking to landlords. And of course, it's all the benefits in one sentence there. The intrigue is there. What exactly do you do then? Well, I reduce the risk by giving you a guaranteed rent. I increase the value of your property because I do a refurbishment on it and I maintain it to a high standard. Okay, so you get the idea here. You want to get those benefits in, then you want to explain it afterwards. Next slide. All right, so here is the offer then. This is how you present it to a landlord. Number one, guaranteed rent. A landlord will only have heard that once before from a letting agent, and they have to pay a nice premium for that. So they have to pay an insurance premium. With you, there's no insurance premium. That's just a part of the package. The three magic words, long-term let. Landlords, again, want this because the biggest thing that hits their bottom line is when they have a void. Even a void for, let's say, 6 weeks. If that house is £1,000 a month, that's £1,500. Most landlords are not budgeting for that void. They just don't budget for it. No management fee.
Neil, sorry, can I just interject here?
Yeah.
Now, for the guys that are online, how many of you guys are already landlords? How many of you guys are already investors that own properties? If you wouldn't mind just saying a quick yes or no. I'm going to do something completely off the cuff here. Okay, so Peter, Jocelyn, Carol, Tanya. Right, okay, so Tanya said no. Okay, no problem. Got a few no's, we've got a lot of yeses. Okay, here's my question to you guys. Now, just imagine, well, not imagine, you are the landlord. What is it that you would want someone to come up to you and say for them to take your property off you? Now, what is it that would attract this kind of proposition to you? Would it be the guaranteed rent? Would it be the long-term let? Would it be the fact that you don't have to pay any fees? Would it be the fact that someone's looking after your property to the same standard that you're doing it as? So if you wouldn't mind, okay, so far people have put passive income, guaranteed rent, looking after a property, all of the above, pay market rent, long-term, and maintenance, the guaranteed rent. So, okay, so pretty much you've covered all the points that we've, no hassle, more money, less hassle, the lack of hassle, long-term rent, guaranteed rent, no fees, all of what's been said, hands-free investing. So, guys, when you're going to approach a landlord, the way that I do it, you've got to remember that I'm also a landlord, I'm also an investor. So I sit here I'm also a letting agent. So I sit hats. Now, when I'm looking at it from always, when I go to meet a landlord, first thing I do, I always read the situation, I understand the landlord, understand what the landlord's paying, what the motivation is, and then we work in accordance. Now, if, for argument's sake, when you go to meet a landlord, now the last tenant may have left a load of mess, and you relate to that. You say, well, yeah, as a landlord myself, I've kind of been down that road where tenants have left da. And then as a result of that, you work on that pain. And then you go down the road of, well, I'm happy, let's make sure that you never have that pain again, because what we're offering you is this, and this. You don't need to worry about tenants. You don't need to worry about your rent coming in. It's going to be guaranteed on the first of every month. It's going to be guaranteed for the next, however, 3, 5, or 7 years. You don't have to worry about dealing with letting agency. You don't have to worry about broken toilets. But do you see what we're doing here? It's not, with all due respect. Now, Ian just said straight away, unfortunately, he says that he lost the sound right at the pinnacle point of the webinar. Now, Ian, log yourself back out, log yourself back in. Now, Peter's come straight in and goes, how do you handle the void where the rental agent or landlord can't? Do you absorb it from your profit? Now, Peter, the key to it is, obviously, this is a business for you. The way that you've got to look at it from a point of view is that you've got to make sure those rooms are occupied. You're banking on the fact that those rooms are occupied to pay the landlord, because if they're not occupied, you've still got to pay the landlord. Now, we mentioned here guaranteed rent. Come rain, sleet or shine, regardless of where that property is occupied, you've got to pay the landlord, which means that there is some form of financial risk. But remember what I talked about a short while ago, everything in property is calculated by risk. You can calculate your risk to the nth degree. Now, my risk to any landlord in any of my rent-to-rent portfolio is 1 month's rent, which means that I know that if I can't occupy that property, if I can't rent that property for whatever reason, I can give them a month's notice and I can walk away. I've never done that. I never envisage on doing that. I never hope that I will do that. But you've got to calculate to a point as, does it work? Will it work? Now, someone's asked a question here about finding the gold mine area. That should be done before you even approach a landlord in that location. Because if you approach a landlord and it doesn't work, guess what? You're losing from day one. So there's lots of things that we take into consideration, and there is a lot of things that you've got to take into consideration. Now, remember, and other benefits that we're going to be talking about, the irresistible offer. You're going to be bringing the property back up to standing. Now, Neil this evening did a live stream from one of his rent-to-rent properties, and he actually put it up on Facebook. Now, as a property, now, Neil, are you still with me?
Yeah.
Okay, so how much did you pay the landlord for that property a month?
I think it's 600, might be 650.
Okay, so £600 a month. Okay, so how much does it cost you to renovate that property?
Well, total is 3,400, but the majority of that is furniture.
Okay, so 3,400, majority of that furniture, which means that Neil has now got assets. Okay, we don't normally see things like furniture as assets, but in this respect, assets, which means that if it doesn't work, he still can take that furniture with him to the next property, next property, next property. So how much would you say is actually, to a point, would you say that you spent £1,000 or £1,400 on stuff like paint?
Maximum of 1,000, which was painting and repairs, maximum 1,000.
So Neil's put £1,000 into this property, plus obviously he's paying his first month's rent. Now, Neil, how long have you had the property? Did you negotiate a rent-free period? What I want to do is give these guys online something to show that this actually works. This is how the negotiation works. Did you get a rent-free period because you had to do the work? Have you brought the property back up to standard? Who furnished it? Did you furnish it? Did the landlord furnish it? And what do the figures look like at the end?
Yeah, okay. I haven't got the exact figures on me, but I'll try and sort of freestyle them from my head. So firstly, I took a 2-week rent-free period on it. So I didn't have to pay him for the first couple of weeks. And then it took another couple of weeks on top of that to get the property ready and to build the furniture to get all that in there. So, based on what I'm getting, I've already made my money back on the refurbishment. So I'll say that straight away. I've made the money back because the first group that went in to look at the property, they took that property right away. And then the same day, they all paid their month's rent up front, which was £1,900. So they paid that. The money went to the landlord, which is his, let's call it 600, because I'm not sure exactly what it is. 600 to the landlord. got £200 in utility bills. That's 800 off the 1900. I got £1,100 profit this month from the property. So I've already made the money back on the refurb, plus an extra couple £100 as well. And as we were saying, the furniture is mine. So that even though I've invested into the property, I still own all that furniture. So really, what you were saying, Ash, to the gentleman that was, I can't actually see any of the comments, so apologies, I can't remember the name. Your risk really is a month. It's not any more than that. And if you follow, I honestly believe that the system we've got for finding your gold mine area is foolproof. Is absolutely foolproof. So even though we're talking about the risks around it, there aren't really any risks of having major voids, because if you do this exactly the way we teach you, you won't have any voids. Otherwise, how would I have been able to scale to so many rooms? If anyone's going to have voids, it's not going to be on 2, 3, 4, 5 houses. It would be on sort of 30, 40 houses upwards. That's where you're going to get voids. So if I'm not having that issue, I wouldn't worry about you having that issue. Personally, I don't think it's a major concern if you follow the system properly.
Okay, so a question that's coming. Again, we'll answer them as we go along. So Paul has put, what about fire doors, fire alarms, and a HMO license? Now, this is a common question that comes up consistently. Now, if you only take on a 2-story property, you don't need to worry about HMO license because it's no longer it's not a licensable HMO, which means that it no longer requires the fire doors and the fire alarm. When you start getting into the realms of HMO license, I know Neil prefers to only take 2-story properties. I, on the other hand, don't give a damn whether you take a 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6-story property. I don't mind taking a HMO license because I know that HMO license will guarantee me for the next pretty much the 5 years. That means that I have to put in probably a little bit more money, which means that I have to put on the fire alarm, I have to put on the fire doors. But guess what, guys? When you're doing that and you're speaking to the landlord, you can tell him that you're adding value. You can tell him that you're creating a property that is going to add value to his property, which means that you can then negotiate a rent-free period. Now, one of my mentees, I don't mind sharing this story with you, and I hope that he doesn't either. This is completely off the cuff. Now, he called me last week, and we found a landlord that's got a 15 bed property that's been sat empty for 3 months. Now, I showed Rich exactly how to approach the landlord, and we've got that property. We've agreed a 6-week rent-free period. Now, the rent is £3,000 a month because it's quite a large property. But then saying that, we did all the research, and we've pretty much got that property, I wouldn't say half occupied, pretty much like a third occupied already, and we haven't even got the property ready. We've put in the break clauses. Now, with a large property like that, the landlord wanted a 3-month break clause as opposed to a 1-month break clause, which is perfectly acceptable. But the one thing that we did do is we negotiated a good rent-free period to allow us to put fire doors on or to spruce the property up. Okay, so Ganesh says that, hey, Arsh, the HMO license takes a few months to get. What if for some reason we can't get the license? Now, Ganesh, it's pretty much guaranteed that you're going to get the HMO license, providing that you're not in something like an Article 4 area, which is a completely different subject of planning, which we can talk towards the end. But providing that you've done the correct works of the property, and believe it or not, the HMO guidelines are all online. All you've got to do is go to your local authority and download the HMO. It's called the Amenity Standards Guide. You can download that for free. You can do that from your local council. So depending on where you are in the country, download the guide. It will tell you exactly what you need to do to the property, providing that you follow the footsteps. And it is a step-by-step guide. There's no reason for that HMO license not to be issued.
I'm just, yeah, I was just about to say, with the HMO license, as Arsh said, I don't really like doing licensed HMOs. It's just not my strategy because I specialise in professionals. With the HMO license, when I have done it with some of my properties, what I was told by the HMO officer, and again, you need to get this confirmed with your council, is that as long as you do sort of follow the guidelines, even if it takes a year to get that license, you can still rent out that property in the meantime, as long as you follow the guidelines, you've got it ready, and you have a pre-inspection, because a pre-inspection is very quick. So just check with your local council what the rules are there, but I know that's the rules where I am, so you can still go ahead with the strategy. Okay, so systems then. Ash, let's go on to the next slide. See if there's anything.
Yeah, we're on.
Yeah. Okay. The key with rent to rent then is you've got to systemize it, and people make this mistake of systemizing it at the beginning. You don't systemize this business right at the start. With a lot of businesses out there, and I can say this because I've got different businesses in different sectors, you systemize them from the beginning. With rent to rent, you don't. What you need to do is you need to be in that business doing it yourself from day one, because rent to rent is slightly different from any other business I've ever done. You've got to master it for yourself. You've got to learn how to do your marketing, where to get the tenants, how to vet the tenants, how, a sort of negotiation system for your viewing, how you're sourcing. There's so much to do, including the refurbishments and everything like that. So I recommend that you do it yourself for the first 3 or 4 houses. And then once you've done that, you can then get someone in like a property manager, and you can teach them exactly what you've done, mentor them for a couple of months, and then they'll just run with it. And again, it's performance-based pay. So you're not paying them a huge salary. You're just paying them a very small commission-based salary and then they'll never leave. My guy, Joe, he started with me right at the beginning, and he's been with me since day one, because his pay structure is commission-based. So what that means, and it's performance-based. So he gets a basic salary, and then he gets paid per each house that he manages. He gets paid for every room that he fills, and he gets a bonus if there's no voids. So this is the way to structure that pay deal. So that, in effect, is a system of the staff. Other systems are cleaning, your utility bills, making sure that everything is like, TV licenses. You've got to pay for that. You've got to make sure your cleaning's done like clockwork. You've got to make sure your inspections are done. These are all systems. They're all charts and or applications. You can do it on your iPad. You can monitor it in all different ways. But you've got to systemize your business. It's absolutely crucial. That's how you're able to scale it and grow it very quickly. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, keep going. Okay, now this is key, because we didn't cover this last time. A lot of people look at rent to rent just as a way to make monthly income. But actually, it's not just that. I was absolutely amazed when I got a valuation of my business, and this was when it wasn't even as big as it is now, at over £1 million. I didn't even think, I know it sounds silly, but I didn't even think that this would be classed as like a large business asset at all. And I got an offer. A Chinese buyer made a really ridiculous offer to buy my business, and because a lot of it is near the city centre in Coventry. Because another thing, we're talking about tenant demand. Coventry University is just exploding in terms of student numbers. I think it's another 7,000 this year, and they're just buying up everything. All the buildings are just getting knocked down. So I've got a shop just outside Coventry University as well. It's a tea shop, and everything around it has just been knocked down, and all accommodation going up. So you're building a business as well, and people will want to buy that business from you, especially if you set it up right and you follow the system. You're near a city centre, or you're near a university or a hospital or an industrial park. Your property, your business of the management is just going to keep going up in value.
Can I interject there again, Neil? Now, Neil's made a couple of value points there, but the one thing that, that's pretty much a long-term goal. Now, the one thing that you've got to think about is that how can you get cash in the bank today? Because that's what I'm assuming a lot of you are online here for today. How do I get money today? Question that you've got to ask yourself is that, are you here for cash flow? If that's the answer, if that's the question, I've got the answer. Now, just imagine now. Now, I mentor at the moment. I think it's about 80. I think it's 84, 89 people. 89 people all in a group situation. Now, the way that I say to people is that they can source rent-to-rent deals all over the country. Now, Paula said that in my area in South London, there's so little property offline, i.e., going to it online. How do you contact landlords without letting agents? Now, my question is that this rent to rent can, my answer is rent to rent can happen anywhere in the country, and I firmly believe that. Now, we've taught people who are in London, so Paul, people in London are successfully doing this. So we've got a young gentleman to the name of JC. He came on our workshop in February 2015, and within a year, he pulled together 23 deals in Croydon. So that's in London. I've got other people all over the country that are doing a number of deals. Now, I know other people that may be based in London, but are then sourcing stock up in Manchester. They've got no intention of taking the property on. But as Neil's rightly put here, that you can simply negotiate the deal and then sell the deal, which technically speaking makes you then become a deal sourcer. Now, I know that we've got Laura Crawford online, who we were talking about a rent-to-rent deal recently, and she had no intention of taking that property on. She was going to sell it. Now, that's a completely different business, but guess what? That's going to make you money in the bank today. So when people say, well, Arsh, I'm in London, I can't make it happen, why don't you look further afield? But instead of taking them on, why don't you practice or perfect your pitch in a different location? Once you've perfected your pitch, then you can come back to London and possibly then start taking properties on. That's just a different point of view, just something completely off the cuff that I thought I'd mention.
Yeah, Ash.
So, moving on. Yes.
Yeah, just on that. I mean, three of my mentoring students that for rent to rent, they source probably 3 or 4 times more deals than any of my other students, and they're all in London. So, in my opinion, just from the results that I've seen, London is probably 3 or 4 times easier to source deals. But again, I think this is coming back to possibly the way that, again, that lady who's just asked the question, I can't see the comments, has probably been trained in a way that isn't effective to source deals. That's probably what it comes down to. I think a lot of this is just down to the marketing and sales side, which people haven't been taught properly. It seems like it's, even in this day and age, with all of our webinars and everything that are out there, it still seems like it's a big mystery how to source these deals properly. So, yeah, okay, I'll let you jump back on.
Yeah, so when you're sourcing deals, there's two things that you got to look for: pain and motivation. I'm a big believer in pain and motivation. Once you understand what the pain is, so you can understand what the motivation is. Now, you guys who are online have all identified that you may be landlords or property investors. Now, you've got to understand that you guys that own property, you've already identified what some of your motivations would be. You want the guaranteed rent, you want the guaranteed success, you want the guaranteed income. That's all motivation. Now, you don't want any of the pain. You don't want tenants. You don't want leaky toilets. You don't want broken taps. You don't want to be called out. You don't want to deal with letting agents. And that's exactly the same pain that every landlord in the flaming country will have. Now, Sadia has asked a question. He goes, why is London harder? Believe it or not, London is not harder. In actual fact, it's easier because the property is more expensive, which means that the debt is higher, which means that there's a greater risk for a landlord to default. It means that they're chasing at wit's end to make sure that property is consistently rented. Now, for argument's sake, now let's tip that on its head. A property in Manchester or a property in Liverpool, you can buy a property in Liverpool. I know this for a fact, that you can buy a property in Liverpool for 30 grand. And the rent on it may be £500 a month. Whereas if you go to London, the property may be worth £1 million. Now, let's just work on the basis that the mortgage on a property worth 30 or 40 grand in Manchester is going to be peanuts in comparison to the one in London. Now, the one in London, let's say that it hasn't been rented for a month or 2 months, that's going to hurt the landlord a lot. Whereas it may not hurt the landlord so much in Liverpool or Manchester. The fact is that once you've got landlords in London, and believe it or not, there's a massive tenant demand. So houses, the only difference is trying to find houses which aren't already converted into HMOs. But then saying that, I'm a big believer that even properties which are already converted into HMOs can already be converted into rent-to-rent deals. And they're the kind of properties that I actually only want to take on. Now, I know Neil talked earlier, and this is the difference between me and Neil. We're like chalk and cheese. We are like chalk and cheese. I only want to take properties on that are already converted into HMOs. Now, people will think, well, why is the landlord going to give you that if the property is already converted into HMO? Because they've done all the hard work. That's very true. But remember, let's go back to my two statements, pain and motivation. Now, what happens, we never know what's happening on the other side of the fence. So we automatically assume that the property is occupied as converted into HMO, that the landlord's going to be cash rich and greedy. In actual fact, maybe you may not have thought of the fact that the landlord is struggling with tenants, the landlord is possibly struggling with debt. This may not be the landlord's only occupation, which means that they may be struggling with time. Have you ever thought about these factors? How many landlords have we got online at the moment that have got properties but also struggle as a result of running their property business in conjunction with their other work? So you've got to take these into consideration. There's no such thing as a one thing win. You know, you've got to look at all the different factors. And here's something that we're going to actually be talking about on the next Rent to Rent masterclass. Now, here's the beauty: is that you actually get to spend 2 whole days with Neil and myself, and we'll be teaching you exactly how to multiply your rent to rent business fast. How to build your rent-to-rent portfolio at the speed of your desires, and the underground secrets to find landlords that desperately need your help. But what we're going to be doing is we're also going to be trying to get some of our previous students who have gone on to some great rent-to-rent success to get on the workshop. I'm going to see if I can try those guys. So Sarita and Peter put 2 true, and yes, I have other work, and I struggle to make both of them balance. And that's my point exactly. The fact is that, you know, we automatically assume that just because you own property, you're already cash rich. But what about all the other things that's going on in the background? And this is where I win with landlords. Now, for argument's sake, I will teach you on this workshop how to approach solicitors, doctors, accountants, tax advisors, solicitors, accountants, doctors, tax advisors. And there's one other group, and they're the only 5 people that I approach, because believe it or not, these are the guys that love the thought of owning property, but hate the thought of managing property. Now, I'm very open and honest in that. Now, I'm not so much more of the accidental landlord. I don't really want to focus on them. I focus on the people that in property but haven't got the time to manage it, because that's where I fit in perfectly. I fit in perfectly because I can provide a solution to their problem. Their problem is that they own property but they can't manage it. My solution is that I've got time to manage it, and I will I will sort that problem out for them. So next thing that we're going to be showing you is that on the Rent to Rent masterclass, how to get leads tomorrow using our proven letter templates, so that you can send out to your logo with your logos to landlords who you may find on Rightmove, Spare Room and Gumtree. But we're also going to be showing you a number of different ways. Now, everyone learns differently. Now, take this, because there's no such thing as one thing fits all. Now, for argument's sake, I've coached and I've taught hundreds, maybe thousands of people, and the one thing that I've learned is that no 2 people are the same. Now, online we may have Said, and we've got Sadia, and we've got Paul, we've got Bob. We're just going through some of their names. Now, everyone's going to be different, so what we need to figure out is, what's your personality type? Now, from your personality type, we can then understand what's the best way for you to approach landlords. Now, some people may not like cold calling. Some people may prefer to send letters. Some people may prefer a different method. So we need to understand who you are, what you're good at, and work on your strengths. Because once we start doing that, we know that you're going to get guaranteed success. There's no point in me telling you to make loads of phone and cold calls if that's not your strength or your forte. Does that make sense? What we're going to be showing you is how to make landlords an offer that they can't refuse, how to get them to say yes to your proposal every time, because it's a great deal for them and a profitable deal for you, which means that we're going to create a win-win scenario. A win for the landlord, a win for you, a win for your tenants who's hopefully going to be living in your property thereafter. We're going to be showing you how to save thousands in legal costs. The reason why we say that is because you're going to be getting in all our documents. You're going to be getting our rent-to-rent agreement. That a few people have talked about so Bob has asked about the break clause. What kind of terminology do we put in to make sure that the break clause is effective? That's already in the contract for you, so you don't need to worry about that. You don't have to spend thousands of pounds on creating a new contract, because you're going to get the contract that we use. And so that you can start this on your rent-to-rent journey the very next day. You never need to worry about that, no matter how big you build your rent-to-rent empire and other tax secrets, which means that you keep more of your hard-earned cash. Yeah, you're able to accurately predict how much money you will make from each property after all costs, because we've got spreadsheets which pretty much calculate to the point at what point do you stop making money. Our spreadsheets makes this a quick and simple process, even if you've failed A-level maths, O-level maths. So normally the price of it is 19.97 plus VAT, and we normally have a capacity of 35 people, and there's only 21 spaces left. But we're not asking you to pay 19.97. We're also going to be showing you about how to find the right staff. So if you want to set this off on a journey, you want to set this as a business, we're going to show you how to find the right staff. What do they look like? How to find them? More importantly, how do you start up their own business? How do you see the opportunity and make more than just a normal paycheck? And how to get them to earn to learn. We're also going to be showing you about how to get them. Sorry, I've never seen this slide before, but I'm going to be completely honest. It's going to be showing the best job ad. How to find. Neil, is this one of your slides?
No, it's not. You wrote this slide, Arsh. That's why I'm laughing.
Right.
It's okay. We can skip this bit.
Okay.
One thing I will say, you said there's 21 spaces left on the course. That was last time, Arsh. We've only got 10 spaces on the course now because I checked it this morning.
Okay, so let's keep moving on, because the one thing that we want to do, we want to be talking about systems, and we're going to also be talking about a lot of people online say, well, can I do this from where I am? Do I need to, will I be able to do this? One person said, can I do this from abroad? Because we'll be talking about outsourcing the things that you don't need to get involved in, like the cleaner, the gardener, the viewings, the tenant issues, and the late night calls. You can outsource all this. Buying and assembling furniture, bookkeeping and accounting, all this can be outsourced. You don't physically have to be there going to IKEA, buying the furniture, assembling it. That, for me, would be a nightmare. The fact of actually putting IKEA. Okay, so I've got a great question come up, Paul, and thank you so much for that question. Well, no, we'll answer that question in a second, because the result of doing all the above is that you work on the business, not in the business, and so that you can be this guy sitting here in your deck chair. And this is a great example, actually. Now, Neil, who we have online, and he's been talking us through the rent-to-rent process. Neil, can you just tell us what's your yearly agenda? So, what do you do every year?
Yeah, I mean, so in terms of living where I live, I don't live in the UK for the whole year. I live in the UK for around 6-7 months each year, and the rest of the time I split between California and other sort of Southeast Asian countries. I like to do a bit of traveling and stuff. This year we might actually do a bit of South America. We're going to go to China because I mentioned about my tea shop and stuff. We've actually got our factory is in Taiwan, so we're going to go and do a tour, look for new suppliers and things. So I actually, in fact, one time we did a webinar and I was at Disneyland in California. So most of my businesses are systemized. It's all systemized. I wouldn't. I don't sit on the beach with a martini in my hand running it all, but yeah, I am able to travel and yeah, I don't spend a lot of time in the UK. Mainly the winters is not. I don't really like the cold weather, so that's why I sort of go away.
Okay, so keep moving on. So we'll be showing you how to grow your business at the speed of your ambition. Now, with all due respect, ambition looks completely different to every individual. Now, the person that we spoke about in Croydon, they decided they had great ambition. They went off and got 20 odd properties in the first year. Now, in the same respect, we've got other people who've gone off and done 2 properties and happy to see how they progress before they progress it further. And there's nothing wrong with that because everyone works at a different pace. Now, JC, who's done 18 rent to rent, which is actually incorrect because it was actually 22/23 in the first year, with a net profit per calendar month of just over 15 grand, all done in London. So it can be done in London, it can be done anywhere in the country. And we'll be showing you the 4 simple steps about how to find, control, furnish, and fill. How to fill them, how to make sure that you've got the guaranteed rent for the landlord, making sure that you don't have empty rooms, which means that you don't have big problems. And all you've got to do is follow the system so you don't have any problems. We'll be showing you how to fill them, how to craft the perfect ad to make sure that tenants are consistently calling you. Give you the example of Rich, who's taken on that 15-bed HMO only this week, and he's already got potentially 5 tenants moving in before we've even starting to pay the landlord. How to make sure that your ads are all in the right places and saying the right things. How to craft the perfect ad. Remember, now one of the biggest things with adverts, I don't mind saying this, is the picture. Because now, when you're a property investor, you've got to be quite creative when you do stuff like this. You need to make sure that you've then got to remove yourself away. You've got to remove yourself away from the emotion of being involved in the property. And then you've got to sit back, as if I'm sitting on the couch right now and saying, well, if I was a tenant, or if I was a prospective tenant, and I looked at that picture, how would I feel? I consistently ask myself this question. So when my team are putting up adverts and I'm consistently checking to see how we're performing, I look at the advert not from the person that owns the property or the person that's got the rent to rent on that property. I look at it from the tenant's point of view. How does it make me feel when I'm looking at that advert? Now, does it make me feel warm? Does it make me feel like I want to call the landlord? What's the wording like? Has it made me actually want to call and create a call to action? So there's lots of things that you've got to take into consideration, because finding a landlord is only one part of the deal. You need to now make sure that you find the tenant to pay for the business. So we'll be talking again, remember, we'll be talking about all the things regarding the advert. So we'll be looking at transport links, parking, distance to work, gym, restaurants, pubs and cafes, because these all play a big part in the psychology of tenants. Now, for argument's sake, if your property is in the middle of Kathmandu, it's probably not going to attract a great deal of attention. But believe it or not, there's a benefit for living in the middle of Kathmandu. All we've got to do is identify it. And we'll be looking at where to post them. So for argument's sake, there's lots of forums. And these are all free forums, believe it or not. So you've got forums on Gumtree, you've got forums on Facebook. There's actually groups. So for argument's sake, in Wolverhampton, there's a group called Wolverhampton News, or Properties to Let in Wolverhampton. There's Rooms to Let in Wolverhampton. And all I do every day, my staff are posting in there. And we're being quite quirky with the way that we're doing it. And then you've got some of the paid for forums like Easy Room and Spare Room, as well as a few others. Finally, we'll be showing you how to replace your job salary with just 12 months, within 12 months, and how to use our simple rent-to-rent system. We'll be showing you how to find the houses to manage at the touch of a button, and we'll be showing you how you can replace your salary in just a couple of hours work a day. Now, you've got to remember that I run 12 property businesses. Now, one of the businesses is my rent-to-rent portfolio. I probably spend on my rent-to-rent portfolio no more than an hour a week. And that's 32 properties. So I manage, well, when I say I manage, my team manage the properties, and I probably have an input of about an hour a week. Now, that's not me being a bit of a snob or chauvinistic pig or anything like that. I'm just showing that how you can systemize it. You don't need to be involved in it. I'd rather spend my time. I think my time is best spent, or my money, I make most of my money when I'm out on the road searching, hunting down stock. Once I've found the stock, it simply is as simple as plug and play. I literally just pass it over to the guys. Here's the property, here's what we're going to do with it, here's what it should make, now go off and do it. And the same is pretty much with Neil. So we'll be showing you how to rent, how your rent-to-rent portfolio. will grow at the speed of your desires with the underground secrets to find landlords that desperately need your help. Remember the two words, pain, motivation. And how to tap this lead source tap on. You need it so that you can grow your portfolio around your other commitments. And we'll be showing you how to get leads tomorrow. Making landlords an offer that they can't refuse and making sure that they say yes to your proposal. And you'll be saving yourself thousands in legals costs as well as time and frustration. And you don't need to worry about becoming a VAT registered company. So I'm going to quickly move on. Because tonight what we're doing is we're putting it out there. We're going to say for all action takers, it's going to be 997. And you can bring your life or your business partner for free. So that's 997 for 2 people, for 2 days in a lovely city called Birmingham. It's at the Jury's Inn in Birmingham on the 15th and 16th of October. And we're so confident that you're going to get a content rich. There is no upsell. That we're actually offering you a 100% money back guarantee, which means that if you think that it's not resonating with you, all you've got to do is attend the first day of the course. If you're not completely happy, utterly satisfied, all you've got to do, say so, and I'll give you a full refund. No questions asked, no hassles, no forms to fill in, no problem at all. And all you've got to do is click on the link. So go to that link there, which is bit.ly/R2R now. And whilst we're doing that, I'm going to answer some of the questions. So Paul has put, and I love this question, he goes, Arsh, why should I do your course rather than any other course available? Now, it's a great question, Paul, and I love this question. And with all due respect, Paul, there are quite a few other rent-to-rent operators. Now, let's break this down into simple points. How many of the other rent-to-rent operators are actually not only just only teaching it, but not doing it? I know that there's quite a few of them that aren't actually doing it, and they're only teaching it. They're only making their income off teaching it. Now, I can show you on a day-to-day basis, should you wish, that you can come down to my office, and I do have people, all of my mentees that are always able to walk into our office any day of the week, and I can show them that we're consistently pitching for properties, we're consistently searching for properties, we're consistently negotiating on properties, and we're doing deals every day. But yes, Neil.
The easiest way to answer this question is really simple. We've created more rent-to-rent success stories in the last year than I think everybody else combined, as far as I'm aware. And that's the easy way to do it. Our students are just out there absolutely smashing it. They're dominating every city that they're in just by following the system. I mean, JC, who I think you're going to mention, already, he did 20 odd houses in London in the space of a year. Even students that come to us who have done other courses, they all say that it's those little tweaks that we've taught, the goldmine area tweaks, the adverts, the whole system, which gets the result. So, it's
what I would like to say is, Paul, there's one guy that I know, and he came on our rent-to-rent workshop, but he's been on a number of other large training organisations courses, and he spent £30,000-40,000 on training courses, and he didn't do a single thing with property. Came on our rent-to-rent workshop. He's now on property number 15 in Newcastle. He's also got to a point where he's actually given up his job in the medical profession. So moving on. So okay. So Bharat says, do you cover rent-to-rent for SA? Now, unfortunately, Bharat, we don't show you how to go off and turn it into an SA. And for those that don't know, SA means serviced accommodation, but the concept is exactly the same. The only thing that's different is the systems that go towards the booking of serviced accommodation, because obviously we know how to do it. It's not something that we can cover in a weekend as well as cover the rent-to-rent strategy, because obviously when you're doing serviced accommodation, you've got to deal with deal with people like Booking.com. You've got to deal with Airbnb. You've got to deal with Expedia. You've got to deal with TripAdvisor, and you've got to deal with reviews, etc. And then you've got to have service channels And channel managers. So there's a number of things that you need to know, but that's something that I can talk to you about separately because we do run workshops on SA. Now, next question, Tanya has asked, is there any other dates coming up, or is it possible to access or buy the recording? And that's perfect because, Tanya, one thing I was going to say is that this workshop is actually being recorded. And for those that can't make it on the workshop, the one thing that I am going to say is that we can say that you can access the recording. So if you want to take advantage of it, you can purchase it tonight at the discounted rate at $997. You'll get access to the recording, which within about a week or two of it being edited. And as a result of that, you can also then come on the next workshop, which is going to be at the early part of 2017. This is the last workshop that we're doing of 2016. This is the last workshop that we're doing of any.
Yeah, I mean, basically, I'm away from just after the course, and I get back into the UK in February. So the next course will be sort of February time, February, March.
I'll tell you what we can do for anyone that's asked is we can actually, if you can't make it in person, what we will do is we'll live stream it from the actual event. So it's not like a Facebook Live, etc. It is a dedicated live stream where you'll get the link where you can watch it. You can see Neil present in person. You'll also get the documents emailed to you, well in advance. Now, Syed said, can you not cover this all in one day? Syed, if I could cover it all in one day, my friend, I don't think it's even possible.
It's not possible. And the reason... Go
Sorry,
ahead.
if I could cover this in one day, Syed, you would be completely disappointed, just purely because the content level would not be there. We would be skimming from point to point to point, and you wouldn't even get what you'd require to go off and do this.
Yeah, let me just jump in now, Ash. Day one is all about rent-to-rent strategy. Day two is all about the negotiations around that. So the marketing and negotiations, how to actually structure the deal and negotiate that deal. And it doesn't matter who says to me, oh, I'm already really good at sales and negotiations. It doesn't matter who says it. As soon as they come and they start doing their practicing, they're making all the mistakes in the book. And we go through the other thing, and here's a really important thing, is the objection handling. Because what happens, and it's the same in sales when I teach sort of salespeople, they'll go through and they won't do the objection handling first because they think they don't need to do it. They go through it all and then they get in objections and they're leaving. And then the next deal, they get another objection and they go away. And then they do it 10 times, a dozen times, and they go, right, now I've gone through all the objections and I know how to do it. And it's just like, well, you've just wasted all of that time. And in that time, a lot of people quit. I'd rather just get on with it from the start, understand all the objections, having gone through it and done the workshop. And the other thing is this, actually day two is already a 2-day workshop that I run on sales and negotiations for the corporate world, squeezed into one day. So you basically got a 1.5-day rent-to-rent course in one day and a 2-day negotiations course into one day. So that 2 days is ram-packed. In fact, some people even complain when we only have a 40-minute lunch break because they say, oh, it's too intense, and now we try and make it an hour lunch break and add 20 minutes at the end. So there's just no way to make it a day.
Okay, so one of the questions that came in was from Sadia, is that we were able to speak to any students before joining like JC. Now, we'll do one better than that, Sadia, because here's some of the guys who actually... the training doesn't just stop on the day, believe it or not. We've actually got a dedicated Facebook forum where all attendees will be entered into, and as a result, you can then the learning continues. So here's a lady called Susie Bates, who's quite a large investor in the Leicester area. She signed up her rent-to-rent. That was earlier this year, and Susie again just signed up another 4 properties in Leicester. Now here's another one. Girish signed up 5, 6, and 8-bed HMOs, who's then gone on within 3 months, taken on 6 rent-to-rent houses. He's now on 15. Now, and remember, here it goes. It's the days of the 15th, 16th of October, and what we'll be getting, you'll be getting, is the 4-step simple process. We're not going to quickly go through all this again, but the money back guarantee stands is that you'll if you're not happy after day one, all you got to do is just give me have a quick chat with me, and you'll get all your money back. So what happens if you do nothing? Because, well, in actual fact, nothing will happen because you don't have to worry about learning anything new. You don't have to worry about taking any action. You don't have to worry about getting out of your comfort zone, which means that your life will not change whatsoever. Your frustrations at work will remain. You still have to suffer through the commute every day, and you'll have to accept that you've got limited choices. So I'd like to thank you first of all for taking time to be on this webinar. I hope that you found that you now understand why now is the best time to start a rent-to-rent business. Someone's asked if you've still got questions and you'd like to have a chat, you're more than welcome to give me a call. So you've got my personal mobile number there, you've got my email address there. But someone's just asked whether we can quickly go back to that link, which is just at the bottom there. And whilst we're doing that, I'm going to go back to some of these questions. So Tony's put, just a quick one, is a risk statement in the management contract, i.e. the rent 1 month rent clause? Yes, it is, because it has to be in there, because it has to be completely transparent that what you're offering is the fact that, yes, you're hoping to take the property on for 7 years, but there is, should something happen, a 1 month break clause. Obviously, you don't emphasize on the fact that there's 1 month break clause because you don't want to emphasize on the fact that it's in there, but the one thing that you've got to state that it is in there, but you have no intention of giving the property back. So let's keep going on. Now, Syed has put, in London, landlords are very greedy with the rents. Possibly, Syed, but then you've got to take into consideration that if you're taking a property on for a long-term period, they're no longer going to have to deal with letting agents, which means that they're no longer going to be charged those fees. You've also got to take into consideration that they're not going to have any voids, they're not going to have any bad debt, they're not going to have any maintenance issues. That's all got to be taken into consideration. They're not going to have any gas safety certificates to deal with. That's all got to be taken into consideration. Now, you know, with all due respect, if a landlord wants 100% of rent with 100% occupancy rate, with zero maintenance, etc., you've got to take into consideration, is this a landlord that you want to work with over the next 3, 5 or 7 years? It's got to be sensible. It's got to work all round. It's got to work all round. So Sayed has put, do I need to set up a shop presence for my rent-to-rent business to win landlords' confidence? Not at all, Sayed. You know, with all due respect, a lot of the people that we've got that are operating all over the country, I would say pretty much 99% of the people don't have any form of high street presence. They may need a virtual office of some kind, but other than that, it definitely doesn't need high street presence. So I wouldn't go to that point of getting that cost. So, okay, so let's just quickly go. Okay. So Bob has put, how do you sensibly sell on a rent-to-rent till you've sourced? You've told the landlord you'll be managing it. That's very true, Bob. But the one thing that you can do is that when you're negotiating it, you may say maybe you or one of your investor colleagues. So provided that you tell them that it's not 100% you that's going to be taking it on, you've got to tell what you're doing is you're selling the concept. There's no need for you to mention that it's going to be you 100% doing it. Okay, you're the person that would have built the rapport. But what you're trying to do is, in essence, say it'll be you or one of your colleagues. So it still does work, and I know there's hundreds of people around the country that are doing it because we do it every day. So I think we're pretty low on questions, Neil. I think that's quite strange, really. So the link is, again, at the bottom of the page. So someone's just said, can we post the link again? Okay, so it's at the bottom of the page for the, so it's bit.ly/r2r now. Someone's asked, can we put my phone number again? So one thing that we can do is, okay. So Sarita's asked a question, have you ever had any bad tenants or ever had to evict anyone? Now, Sarita, I'd be lying if I said no, because from time to time, and this will come with experience as well. You may have a tenant who may try their luck and may not pay the rent. You may have a tenant from time to time that may cause a bit of damage on the way out, but there are ways to get around it. For argument's sake, one thing in the systems that we'll be showing you is how to make it so that the tenant is pretty much impossible to leave with bad debt voids, bad debt or damage. And I don't mind sharing this secret with you, is by generating guarantors. So everyone will have a guarantor. Now in Neilstown in Coventry, or in Neil's City in Coventry, students have parents. Now, if they can afford to go to pretty much, it's a generalized statement, but if they can afford to go to university, chances are that their parents are living in a property that they own or they've got a mortgage on, which means that they can act as a guarantor. Now, if they're not willing to act as a guarantor for their child, what's that telling you? Is that the tenant that you want to take on? Because don't they trust their child enough to live in your property? So, see you later. Enjoy going to speak to another landlord, but I'm not going to take you. Now, Syed has put, can I pay in instalments? I'll tell you what we will do, Syed. If it's of interest, then you do want to pay instalments. Yes, providing that the full amount is paid prior to the event, which is, I think it's just under 3 weeks' time. Yes, we'll allow you to pay in 3 instalments. So if that's of interest, yes, what you can do is give me a call after the webinar and we can make that happen.
Arsh.
So, yes.
Just an update, we're down to 5 seats left now. 5 seats.
Okay, great. So Tabita has asked the question, who makes the application for the license, the landlord or me? Now, you've got to remember, Tabita, I'm assuming you're talking about the HMO license. Now, there's always a person that owns it, and then there's a person that's doing the rent-to-rent. Now, this all comes down to subject to negotiation. The beauty with rent-to-rent, it is all down to negotiation. Now, with all the ones that I've done, I've made the application for the license because I'm the person that's taken on the long-term commitment of it. Now, naturally, that costs around £500 for 5 years, and where we are, and when you break it down per week, that's like £2 a week, or less than £2 a week. So you have to take into consideration. You have to take that into consideration that. Or if you're looking at a licensed HMO, you then have to look at the fire doors and you have to look at the fire alarm. So it's the first thing that you may want to do, depending on the area, depending on the kind of properties that you're looking at, possibly look at unlicensed HMOs to start to get you off the ground, and then look at licensed ones a little later on. So Tony's put, if you're only looking at professionals, are we asking for a guarantor for them too? Why not? I ask for a guarantor regardless whether they're working, they're not working, they're students, whatever they may be. Someone in the background is going to be willing to vouch for them. So Ganesh has put, have you ever had to pay more than the advertised rent to grab a deal? In London, some estate agents expect you to pay more because you're a corporate lets. There's nothing wrong with doing that. For argument's sake, I know that there's some properties in Wolverhampton, 450, and I don't mind paying 500. Because you're paying the landlord, the landlord's going to be happy that obviously he's getting market rent, or if not above the market rent. You've got to remember what the value is. Now, best way of putting this is that if you know that you're going to be making a lot more for it, do you mind paying that extra on the basis that you're not going to pay a deposit, or you're not going to pay rent in advance, or etc. So there's lots of things that you've got to take into consideration, but it's very rare that I pay a deposit. Well, out of all 32 rent-to-rent properties that I've got, I've only ever paid a deposit once. But I don't mind paying slightly over on the rent if I know that there's cash flow at the back end of it. Okay, so Ken has put, what technology systems do you recommend to free up your time? There's so many, Ken, because you've got believe it or not, most of my business is all done off my phone. So for argument's sake, I've got banking apps off my phone. I've got apps which I can utilize to upload my pictures. I've got apps to do floor plans. I've got apps to create tenancy agreements. I've got apps to manage my apps. It's crazy kind of technology. So it's quite a broad subject, but it's one that obviously we go through. The technology and the systems point is one that we go through in the workshop. So just quickly having a look if there are any other questions. I think we've kind of answered them. So another person has asked for the link again, which I will quickly go back to. Again, it is on the 15th, 16th of October. If you can't make it for whatever reason, you can get access to the recording by taking advantage of the special offer, and not in that you get to come on the next workshop, which will be at the start of 2017. So yeah, that's pretty much answered. We've answered. So Ganesh put not paying deposits, maybe for established companies. You still recommend paying deposits for newbie companies? I've never paid a deposit for. Well, I've only paid that one deposit. That's because I really wanted the right property in the right location at the right rent. And the landlord was insistent on that. Other than that, I refused to pay deposit, just purely because I'd rather spend that money on investing in the property and increasing the value for the landlord in that property. So, Neil, is there any other questions that you'd like to, anything else that you'd like to say?
I think we've covered quite a lot in tonight's webinar, Arsh. Just for you online, is there anything that you would like to ask me before I get going?
No, I think so far we're all good to go. But I'm just conscious of the fact that okay. So Chris has put, how do you find the gold mine area? Do you want to answer that one, Neil?
That's the one that you can ask me anything else, but I don't give out my strategy on the gold mine area just because that's my USP in the marketplace, really. That's what I teach on the course. But anything else, I'm happy to talk about.
Okay, so right, okay. Let's just have a quick look. Do you offer lease options to the landlords? Ken, yes, we do. The difference between a rent-to-rent and a lease option is obviously the option to purchase. That's something that we discussed briefly on the course, because obviously a lease option, we can go to great depth and it could take up time of the workshop. So make sure it's worthwhile taking on after the rent. Sorry, so what's the easiest way to price up costs to make sure that it's worthwhile taking it on after the rent?
Yeah, we actually cover that as well in great detail. But just to answer it really quickly is, what you do is you always do your figures beforehand. So we'll cover this on day 2 on how to actually analyze the deal, do all your research, planning, preparation beforehand. Because one of the things, and this is a sales principle, if you go into a negotiation, let's say you went in to a negotiation with Tesco or one of the big supermarkets, their buyers are relentless. They've already planned out everything they think you're going to counter them with and all this. And that's how they get, the best deals out there. So what you do is you do the same, except you're not relentless or ruthless. You plan out the figures in detail beforehand so that you know, okay, this is my budget. I'm not going to spend more than 6 months cash flow on a renovation. And then when you actually go in there, you find out, how much that landlord wants. You plot it against your calculations, and then it's really simple. It's a yes, it's a no. It's a we need to renegotiate this, and then you just cost up the refurb. But again, we'll teach you that on the day, how to actually cost up the refurb. We go through all of that, and you get all the lists and the mind maps and everything, and even where to buy the furniture. So yeah, you'll get all of that when you come on the training.
Okay, perfect. So guys, on that note, I appreciate we've been on for quite a while, so hopefully you can go off and enjoy the rest of your evening. Hopefully we'll look forward to seeing you on the 15th and 16th of October in Birmingham. If there are any other questions, you can give me a quick call. I'm going to be available for the next 20 minutes. Failing that, you can email me and I'll get back in contact with you tomorrow. Neil, thank you very much for being online. Hopefully you've enjoyed it.
Yeah, I always enjoy the webinars and answering people's questions and just having that opportunity to help people who were in my position a few years ago. Because honestly, I feel for you. I know what it's like being in a job that you don't enjoy and you want to escape from. And there's a lot of nonsense going around in the especially in the property world. You know, you see these videos on Facebook with people in their flash cars that, by the way, they've rented. It's just not true, you know. So I like to help people and show legitimately how to do it properly, and you know, give you realistic figures. So if I can help you with that, you know, that's what I'm here for, really.
Perfect. All right, guys. Well, have a lovely evening. Take care, and we look forward to speaking to you all very soon. Take care, guys. Good night. God bless.